secrecy oath binds me for life, but so I can only talk about things that are unclassified. I rather think not, because this is December, UK, it was freezing cold. People, the senior commanders had been briefed that something had happened.
How many cases would you say, ballpark, you had to review and at least look into before crossing it off the list, or maybe not, over your 3-4 years there? Thousands?
I would say, I don't know, the number of cases that came in that I investigated was probably less than that, probably 700, 800, 900, something like that. But obviously, from time to time, I would dip into the archives because one of the big things that you tried to do was do some trend analysis. I mean, as I say, I did this job 91 to 94. We'd had sightings going back to the Second World War.
Yeah.
We'd had a formally constituted program from 1953 onwards. We had a lot of files. I mean, one of the reasons I can talk about this, and my secrecy oath binds me for life, but so I can only talk about things that are unclassified and in the public domain. But one of the reasons that I am able to talk about this is the British government has declassified and released a lot of this material. And just to give you an idea, and they, by the way, I'd taken early retirement when they released this, but they asked me to come back and help publicize the campaign. So because it was a good way to show our commitment to
When was that?
That was the program to declassify. The first batch of files was declassified and released in May 2008. I recorded a video for it somewhere at the National Archives.
Oh, and you had gotten out in 06.
I'd got out in 06. But the point is that program, which was originally supposed to take 3 years, 2 to 3 years, ended up taking 11 years because all sorts of other things kept getting in the way. We declassified and released, or sometimes didn't declassify because it was unclassified, but you still have to redact, for example, the names and addresses and personal data of witnesses for data protection. We've released about 60,000 pages of UAP-related documentation. So there's a lot.
And how much of it comes to a conclusion and says, oh, it was this, or oh, it was most likely that, versus how much of it is the open-ended stuff like, we can't explain this?
Well, most of it comes to a definitive conclusion, or if it doesn't actually say so in black and white, it is obvious from the documents what it is. I mean, to give an extreme example, bright white light with green and red flashing lights either side seen close to Heathrow Airport. I mean, literally, you would, you know. So some of it is blindingly obvious. So that was that. But before I lose my thread, let me get back to the Rendlesham story. I'll do the second and third nights quite quickly.
Well, we got all day. Take your time.
Well, no, we haven't. Hey, tonight they're turning on the lights of the Bryant Park Christmas tree.
Oh, they are.
So,
That's right.
yeah.
We got to get to that.
Yeah, got to get to that.
What time is that at?
I think it's 6.
Okay.
But
we'll have you there. Don't worry.
yeah. But so anyway, and maybe there's some hot mulled wine.
Oh,
So,
yeah, good stuff.
I mean, the Christmas market, right?
That's it. Every word is like, it's got such a pizzazz to it in British. It's great.
Anyway, back to Rendlesham. So the second night of activity, we don't know much about it because these people did not submit formal incident reports, really, because it turned into a bit of a scandal. Apparently, some military personnel, and I can't remember whether it was Bentwaters or Woodbridge, but they were driving a Jeep, and a ball of light kind of went through the cab, and there were 2 witnesses, the driver and the front seat passenger. And I can't remember whether their testimony was that the windows were open. I rather think not, because this is December, UK, it was freezing cold. I think the testimony is almost like some of these weird ball lightning cases, that this ball of light sort of physically somehow went through the closed glass window on one side and then out on the other. And apparently one of the witnesses was so traumatized by this that they had a kind of almost breakdown and had to be returned to the United States, to their parent unit. I'm less authoritative on that because I have not spoken to the individual concerned. I've only had this story, albeit from 2 or 3 people who were there, but I've only had that secondhand. So
it's fascinating. It's fascinating, especially with like the biggest story, as you say, in the UK, that there is, at least on the ground, U.S. involvement.
Yes, it's always there.
Yeah.
So the third night, things get quite interesting. There is an awards ceremony in the social club, one of these kind of Christmas end of year events, and all the senior officers are present. And then the door opens and a flustered junior officer comes up to the senior commanders and salutes and says, "Sir, it's back." And they all like, what are you talking about? The guy says, "The UFO has returned." So there is a discussion. Obviously, people, the senior commanders had been briefed that something had happened. And they were still investigating. No one knew exactly what. Or if they did, they weren't saying. So the senior officers, the 2 senior officers present, or I think the 3, kind of batted it around between them and like, okay, who's gonna deal with this? And the deputy base commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, he said, I'll do it. And he threw together a team of about half a dozen people and sort of went out. They didn't see anything straight away. So what they decided to do was they were like, well, let's go to the location where this thing apparently landed on the first night. And they went to the site, and I kind of skipped over this when talking about the first night, but it kind of wraps up with the third night, so it doesn't matter.
You had said that there was, I just remembered this though, you had said that there was conflicting reports from an eyewitness over time as to whether or not it crashed or landed originally.
Well, I don't think anyone said it crashed.
Okay.
But there were conflicting reports over whether it was a structured craft or just a very, very bright light that the other witness couldn't see what was emitting that light. So they went to this clearing, and they already knew this, but there were the physical traces. The branches had been smashed off the trees. The fairly small clearing. Branches smashed off the trees, apparently by this object as it had first come down and perhaps as it had taken off again.